You wake up wanting something: coffee, comfort, a message from someone specific. Even before you're fully conscious, the wanting has already started. It's not a choice, it's automatic. Something inside you is already reaching for the next thing. Schopenhauer called this force the will to live. Not your personal will, not your conscious choices. A blind, relentless force that moves through you. It's older than your thoughts, deeper than your personality. It wants without reason. You don't choose to be hungry, you don't choose to want connection, you don't choose to fear death. These urges arrive fully formed. The will to live is using your body, your mind, to perpetuate itself. You are its vehicle. Think about the last thing you achieved, a goal you worked toward for months. The moment you got it, there was joy. Brief, bright, undeniable. And then, within days, it faded. The wanting returned, already searching for what's next. This is what Schopenhauer saw everywhere. Humans caught in an endless cycle. Want, pursue, achieve, feel empty. Want again. The satisfaction is always temporary. The wanting is permanent. We are built to never be fulfilled. You see it in relationships. The pursuit is electric. You can't stop thinking about them. Then you're together. The electricity fades. The mystery dissolves. What was once thrilling becomes familiar, and the will starts searching again. It's not that the person changed. It's that the wanting was never about them. The will needed an object, something to project its endless hunger onto. Once obtained, the illusion breaks. The wanting moves elsewhere. You see it in careers. You wanted this job desperately. You got it. For a week, maybe a month, it felt like a rival. Then the problems appeared. The boredom, the desire for the next position, the next title, the next validation. Schopenhauer said we swing like a pendulum between pain and boredom. When we want something we don't have, we suffer. When we have everything we want, we're bored. There's no position of rest, only oscillation between two forms of dissatisfaction. Think about a weekend with nothing to do, no obligations, complete freedom. At first, it's relief. Then, within hours, the restlessness creeps in. You feel empty. You need something to want, something to pursue, even if it's meaningless. The will to live doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about continuation. Survival, reproduction, perpetuation of the species. Your joy is irrelevant. Your suffering is irrelevant. Only the continuation matters. This is why you can't logic your way out of desire. You know that new purchase won't make you happy. You know the validation won't last, but the knowing doesn't stop the wanting. The will operates below reason. You've probably felt this in moments of clarity, after a breakup, after a failure, when the wanting temporarily quiets. You see how much energy you spent chasing things that didn't matter, how the pursuit itself was the trap. But then the will recovers. It finds a new object, a new goal, a new person. The cycle begins again, because the will doesn't learn, it doesn't evolve, it only wants. And it uses your intelligence to justify its wanting. Schopenhauer believed this will is the thing in itself, the reality beneath all appearances. Everything you see, nature, humans, animals, is this same blind striving expressing itself, a universe of wanting in endless forms. Watch a plant grow toward light. Watch an animal hunt. Watch a person scroll through their phone at midnight. Same mechanism, different expression. The will reaching, always reaching, never satisfied, never complete. You are not in control as much as you think. Your decisions feel reasoned, but beneath them, the will is already deciding. It wants survival, it wants pleasure, it wants to avoid pain. Your reasons come after. This is uncomfortable to accept. We like to believe we're rational, that our choices are our own, but Schopenhauer strips that comfort away. You are not the author. You are the character the will is writing. Think about sexual desire. You don't choose who you're attracted to. You don't choose when desire arrives. It appears fully formed, demanding attention, the will using your body to perpetuate itself into the next generation. Schopenhauer saw romantic love as the will's greatest trick. We think we're choosing a soulmate. We think it's about connection, compatibility, destiny. But beneath the poetry, the will is calculating genetics, selecting traits for offspring. This doesn't make love false, but it makes it less personal than we'd like. You're not special to the will, you're useful, a vessel for continuation. Your feelings are just the will's way of ensuring you participate. The will is why you can't sit still, why meditation is difficult, why silence feels threatening. Stillness reveals the wanting. When you stop moving, stop consuming, stop pursuing, you feel the will's restlessness directly. Most people avoid that feeling. They fill every moment. Music, podcasts, social media, work, plans. Anything to avoid the silence where the will's emptiness becomes obvious. The noise is a distraction from the void. But Schopenhauer believed awareness was the first step. You can't escape the will, but you can see it. You can recognize when it's pulling your strings, when the wanting isn't really yours, when you're being used. There are moments when the will releases its grip. Aesthetic experiences, when you're absorbed in music, art, nature. Time disappears. The wanting stops. You're not pursuing anything. You're simply present, temporarily free. Schopenhauer believed art offers brief escape. In aesthetic contemplation, you're no longer a willing subject. You become pure observer. The will can't operate when you're not identifying with your body, your needs, your goals. But these moments don't last. Eventually, hunger returns. Tiredness, desire, the will reasserts itself. You're pulled back into your body, your needs, your endless cycle of wanting. The escape was temporary. The trap is permanent. You see the will most clearly in suffering, when you want something desperately and can't have it. The pain isn't just disappointment, it's the will being thwarted, its agenda blocked, and it makes you suffer until you pursue again. This is why rejection hurts so much, why failure feels existential, why loss creates such deep pain. It's not just about the specific thing, it's the will experiencing resistance, its fundamental drive being denied expression. But Schopenhauer noticed something else. The people who suffer most are those who want most, the ambitious, the passionate, the ones with strong desires. The more you want, the more you suffer. Desire and pain are proportional. So what's the alternative? Schopenhauer pointed toward negation of the will. Not suicide, not destruction, but a gradual withdrawal of investment, wanting less, needing less, expecting less. A kind of voluntary poverty of desire. This sounds depressing. A life without desire sounds like no life at all. But Schopenhauer argued the opposite. The less you want, the less you suffer. And in that space, a different kind of peace becomes possible. He pointed to ascetics, monks, people who renounced worldly pursuits, not because they were weak, but because they saw through the game. They recognized the will's trap, and they chose not to play. You don't have to become a monk, but you can practice small negations. Notice when you're about to buy something you don't need. Notice when you're seeking validation you don't require. Notice the wanting before it controls you. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about choosing your desires consciously, rather than being swept along by every impulse the will generates. You can want things, but you don't have to be enslaved by wanting. Schopenhauer believed compassion was the only true virtue. Because in compassion, you see through the illusion of separation. You recognize the same will suffering in others, the same blind striving, the same pain. You are them. When you hurt someone, you're hurting the same will that animates you. When you help someone, you're easing the suffering of the same force that makes you suffer. There's no real separation, just one will in countless forms. This is why cruelty is ignorance, not moral failure. When you harm others, you don't understand that you're harming yourself. Not metaphorically, literally. The boundary between you and them is illusory. The will is singular. Most people never see this. They live entirely within the illusion. They believe they're separate individuals with separate interests. They compete, dominate, accumulate, never realizing they're fighting themselves, wanting against wanting. Schopenhauer's philosophy is often called pessimistic, and it is. He doesn't offer false hope. He doesn't promise that everything happens for a reason. He says life is suffering, wanting is suffering, and there's no final satisfaction. But there's strange comfort in this. When you stop expecting life to fulfill you, you stop being disappointed. When you stop believing happiness is just around the corner, you stop chasing it desperately. You accept what is. This acceptance isn't defeat. It's clarity. You see the mechanism. You understand why you suffer. And in that understanding, the suffering loses some of its power. Not all, but some. Enough to breathe. You'll still want things. You'll still pursue goals. But maybe with less desperation, less attachment to outcomes, less belief that this next thing will finally be the thing that completes you, because nothing completes you. The will to live doesn't stop. Not until death, but your relationship to it can change. You can stop identifying with it completely. You can create distance, watch it operate without being fully consumed by it. This is what meditation practices aim for, not stopping thoughts, not stopping desires, but creating space between you and them, seeing them as events, not commands. The will says jump. You can notice the command without obeying. You've probably experienced this accidentally. In moments of exhaustion, after giving up on something, when you finally stopped trying and paradoxically felt relief. The will released you, not forever, but for a moment. Schopenhauer wrote that life is a business that doesn't cover its costs. The suffering outweighs the pleasure. The pain of wanting exceeds the brief satisfaction of getting. If you calculated honestly, you'd see the deficit. But we don't calculate honestly. The will keeps us optimistic. It makes us forget past pain. It makes us believe this time will be different. This purchase, this person, this achievement. The will lies to keep you playing. You can see this in how people talk about their lives. Ask someone if they're happy. They'll say yes, mostly. Then ask about their daily experience. Stress, frustration, worry, boredom. The calculation doesn't add up. We're trained to be optimistic, to see the bright side, to believe things will improve. And they might, temporarily. But the structure remains, the will remains, the cycle of wanting and disappointment continues regardless. Schopenhauer isn't telling you to give up. He's telling you to see clearly, to stop lying to yourself about what life is, to accept the fundamental nature of existence. And in that acceptance, find a different way. The way isn't through more wanting, more achieving, more accumulating. It's through less, through withdrawal, through the gradual recognition that you don't need what you think you need, that the wanting itself is the problem. This doesn't mean becoming passive. You can still act, still create, still participate in life, but from a different place, not from desperate need, not from the belief that this will save you, from choice. You might be thinking this all sounds too dark, too hopeless, but consider the alternative. Spending your entire life chasing satisfactions that don't satisfy, believing the next thing will be different, never learning, never seeing. Schopenhauer offers something else, not happiness, not fulfillment, but truth. And in truth, even difficult truth, there's a kind of freedom. You're no longer confused about why you suffer. You understand the mechanism. The will to live will operate until you die. This isn't something you fix. It's not a problem with a solution. It's the fundamental condition of being alive. Wanting is what life is. You are the wanting. But you can be the wanting that knows it's wanting, the desire that sees itself as desire, the will that recognizes its own mechanism. And in that recognition, something shifts. Not everything, but something. You'll still feel the pull, the urge to buy, to achieve, to impress, to acquire. But maybe you'll pause. Maybe you'll recognize the will's voice. Maybe you'll choose differently. Not always, but sometimes. Those moments of pause are where freedom lives. Not in getting what you want, not in having no desires, but in the space between desire arising and action following. In that gap, you exist as something more than the will. Schopenhauer believed most people sleepwalk through life, driven by forces they don't understand, making choices that aren't really choices, suffering without knowing why, the unexamined life governed by blind will. But you're here, you're reading this, you're questioning. That means something. It means the will hasn't completely consumed you. There's a part of you that wants to understand, that wants to see clearly. That's rare. Don't expect understanding to fix everything. It won't. You'll still suffer, you'll still want, you'll still be disappointed, but you'll suffer consciously, want consciously, be disappointed consciously. And that changes everything. The goal isn't to transcend the will entirely. That's only possible in death. The goal is to loosen its grip, to create moments of respite, to live with awareness rather than blind compulsion, to choose your suffering. Because you will suffer. That's guaranteed. The only question is whether you suffer meaninglessly, driven by unconscious forces, or whether you suffer with understanding, with dignity, with the awareness that this is the human condition. Schopenhauer's philosophy doesn't offer comfort, but it offers truth. And for some people, truth is more valuable than comfort. For some people, seeing clearly is worth the pain of what you see. You might reject this entire framework. That's fine. The will doesn't care if you believe in it. It operates regardless. Your acceptance or rejection changes nothing about its function, only about your awareness of it. But if you've felt the emptiness after achievement, if you've noticed the pattern of wanting and disappointment, if you've wondered why nothing ever feels like enough, then maybe Schopenhauer is describing something you already know. The will to live is not your enemy. It's not something to fight. It's the ocean you're swimming in, the air you're breathing, the ground you're standing on. You can't escape it. You can only understand it. And in understanding, you gain a strange kind of peace. Not the peace of satisfaction, not the peace of getting what you want, but the peace of seeing clearly, of no longer being confused about what life is. Life is the will to live, expressing itself through you. You are its temporary form, its brief manifestation. When you die, the will continues in other forms. Your individuality is just a wave in the ocean. This perspective makes your problems smaller, not less real, but less personal. You're not uniquely cursed. You're not failing at life. You're experiencing what every conscious being experiences. The suffering inherent in wanting. The animals feel it too, in their own way. The hunger, the fear, the drive to survive. The will operates in the lion and the gazelle, the predator and prey, all caught in the same cycle, all wanting, all suffering. Even the plants, reaching toward light, competing for resources, growing, reproducing, dying. The will is everywhere, in everything. It's the fundamental force of existence, and you're part of it, not separate, never separate. So what do you do with this understanding? You live, you continue, but maybe with less intensity, less desperation, less belief that your suffering is unique or that your satisfaction is just around the corner. You might find small pleasures more satisfying, not because they're objectively better, but because you're not expecting them to save you. A good meal, a conversation, a moment of beauty. Enough because you're asking less. You might also find it easier to let go of grudges, of ambitions, of the need to be right. When you see that everyone is driven by the same blind force, judgment becomes harder. Understanding becomes easier. Compassion isn't a moral achievement in Schopenhauer's view. It's recognition of truth. When you see that the person who hurt you is also trapped by the will, also suffering, also blind, how can you hate them? This doesn't mean accepting harm. You can protect yourself, set boundaries, remove yourself from harmful situations, but without the additional suffering of personal offense, without making it about you. It was always about the will. The same applies to your own mistakes, your regrets, your failures. Yes, you made choices, but were they really yours, or was the will moving through you? This isn't about avoiding responsibility, it's about understanding causation. You can take responsibility and still understand you're not entirely in control. Both can be true. You're responsible for your actions, and your actions arise from forces deeper than conscious choice. The paradox is real. Living with paradox is uncomfortable. We want clear answers, simple truths, but Schopenhauer offers complexity. You're free and not free. You're individual and not individual. You're the will and separate from it. All true. Maybe the point isn't to resolve the paradox. Maybe it's to sit with it, to let the complexity exist without needing to fix it, to accept that life doesn't offer the clarity you want, only the truth. The will to live will continue wanting through you. Tomorrow you'll wake up and the cycle begins again. Hunger, desire, plans, worries. The mechanism doesn't stop, but now you see it, and that seeing changes something fundamental. You're no longer sleepwalking. You're no longer blindly following every impulse. You're still in the current, still being pulled. But you know you're in the current, you know you're being pulled. And knowledge is power. Not the power to escape, not the power to stop wanting, but the power to see, to choose consciously, to suffer with dignity, to love with awareness, to live as both the will and its witness.